Thank you, everyone, for being here. We're live. So welcome to the City Council meeting. Today is Tuesday, March the 18th. Like all of our prior meetings, we're streaming live on the City of Madison YouTube channel, and we're also archiving it there. We have a good agenda for tonight, so we will begin and invite everyone to stand and recite the Lord's Prayer, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll get into tonight's business.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Clerk, may we have a roll call?
Sure.
Roll call, please.
Sure. Patrick Tevenow.
Here.
Carla Krebs.
Here.
Lucy DeTillo.
Here.
Josh Schaefer.
Here.
Joel Storm.
Here.
Jim Bartlett.
Here.
And Josh Wilbur is absent.
All right, thank you. Council, have you had an opportunity to review the minutes from the last meeting dated March the 4th? If so, will entertain a motion to approve.
I move that the minutes be accepted as presented.
I second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And we're going to deviate from the agenda for just a bit, just because of time constraints. So we're going to invite Madison Fire Department Chief DeVries to give us a report. Welcome, Chief.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Council. Just a few things to review, and then we are finishing up 24 and 24 year in reviews. Our total incident responses was 310 for the department. 32 of those were fire-related, with 14 actually structure fires. Those could be small room and contents as well as well-involved structures. 89 false alarms, 77 medical-related, and we usually run about 40 to 50 gas-related calls a year, and you see us a lot with our gas meters, and we know downtown Madison has some antiquated gas lines. We have ran 57 of those last year. So training, that seems to be a big topic at the fire department. I'm very happy to say this last year, 2024, was our largest training hour cumulative for the department. It was 3,655 training hours logged. We just wrapped up a Firefighter 1 course, 2 weeks ago, Mike? Yes. We did our live burns. Thanks to Gent, Kentucky for allowing us to use their burn tower. So we've got 6 new Firefighter 1 that are completing that state certification and moving forward. So also in 2024, we wrapped up a 40-hour fire command officer boot camp, so to speak. We had a 40-hour class for all our captains, lieutenants, and sergeants, and other command officers that needed to hone up on some of those skills. I'm very happy to have that under our belt. So with that, going forward in 2025, myself, Jeremy Cornelius, and Travis Conover were the only 3 command staff officers. We did fill 2 vacancies that we've had for several years. That was Brandon Ehlers and Adam Suter stepped into those roles. They were successful graduates of our command officer boot camp. And the thing I'm most excited about is, if you all remember that last when we were doing budget workshops, we talked about community risk reduction. We had a very successful hiring process. We hired 2 part-time community risk reduction specialists. They used to be called fire prevention officers, so now it's a mouthful with community risk reduction specialist. So moving forward with that, they're in the middle of their training. They're ready to hit the ground on May 1st is when we're going to unleash the hound, so to speak, and have them get out in the community. So you may ask what a community risk reduction specialist does. They do more than just install smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors. They work with the community leaders as far as business owners to help reduce our ISO, which is our insurance rating throughout the city. We're currently a 4. Our goal is to obviously be a 3. The lower you are, the less our insurance rates are for the community as well as residents and or businesses. I've talked to several of the insurance providers around the city. They're very excited to have, hopefully, an insurance reduction. We're about 3 years behind as a fire service because of COVID. During the COVID times, they would not let their adjusters go out and rate other departments. So hopefully we can get that rated this year, and hopefully in 2026 we can have our insurance rate reduced to a 3. So with that, they're also going to be going out and getting in each of the businesses, collecting data. Like Madison is very famous for our historic area, which they have taxpayers below, and they have residents above. So we, as a department, don't know how many people are living above, how many apartments are above each of these structures. So it's very important to us we have that information if we do have an incident in that city block as well. So we can also collect that data as far as what the business is and what they may be storing. As of today, we've responded to 79 incidents totally this year. So we're on an uptick from last year. A lot of those calls so far are the medical calls, and unfortunately, we've had 5 structure fires already this year. So we're ahead of the curve for 2024. Any questions from the council?
If someone is wanting to have some things installed in their home, what's the best way, the phone number to call, person to reach, et cetera?
So right now, it's antiquated. You just call basically my office, and we work with the 265-8350, and we just schedule those out. Working with Hannah Fagan to update our website. We've got the forms available, so we're just going to go to our website. You follow a hyperlink, you fill out the information, and then we'll get emailed to our community risk reduction specialist emails directly.
Okay.
As well as fire report request, inspection request, any of those things. We're trying to streamline those down, request down a little bit for our increased services we're providing.
Thank you.
Chief, I think the risk reduction specialist is a great role.
I forgot community in there. Community risk reduction specialist.
Community risk reduction specialist.
That's a mouthful.
I was thinking CCR there for just a second.
It's not Creed. It's not Creed.
Doesn't totally relate. But I think that's a great role
It is.
to perform for our community because risk management is key, and particularly in the historic district where you have shared walls, you could have a structure fire that could get out of hand very, very quickly.
It rapidly could.
And the information you're collecting by collaborating with the property owners and businesses would be invaluable in a response situation.
How does the health of the volunteer force look, and what are some of your thoughts for inspiring some of the youth to, come on and be a part of this organization?
If I had an answer to that, we'd all be millionaires. It's not just a Madison problem. It is an Indiana problem as well as a national problem. We're okay, so to speak. Our numbers are dwindling as we all get older. I just had a birthday not too long ago, so I'm getting more gray as the day goes along. Our department is an aging or graying department. Very fortunate, out of those 6 individuals, 5 of them were in their late 20s, early 30s. So.
Is Ivy Tech still doing that supplementary program where they'll pay for some education?
Currently, they still do. Former State Representative Randy Fry spurred that bill, where Ivy Tech will still cover the cost if you're an active volunteer firefighter throughout the state of Indiana.
Gotcha.
Great benefit.
To pursue an associate's degree.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
What's next for Madison Fire Department, Chief?
Training. Looking at how we can offer some better services as far as community risk reduction and getting those guys on the street as quickly as possible.
Chief, do your numbers relative to responses include, mutual aid?
That they do.
They do, okay.
For the surrounding Jefferson County as well as Trimble County.
Yeah, I don't know if, maybe explain what mutual aid is.
So automatic mutual aid is basically the Madison Township area, as well as any other county agencies in Jefferson County. We've responded north as far as North Vernon, as well as Marble Hill. We have automatic mutual aid, which means when a fire or a typical call type comes in, Central Jefferson County Central Dispatch will dispatch a Priority 1 and Priority 2 departments. That could be, let's say, US 2 Premier. Madison Township as well as City of Madison Fire Department will get automatically dispatched to that. With Trimble County, we help them, since they're a dwindling department as well, we help them basically from the Ohio River all the way to Milton Station 2. We send Engine 1 over there as well as some assisting manpower if they were to have a working structure fire. That actually comes from Kentucky State Police, and that's sometimes a little tricky with 2 dispatching agencies across state lines. Sometimes we have a time delay of 2 to 3 minutes sending them help and resources.
Any reciprocity in that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one thing, if we ever have a water shortage, Milton has also requested to send us tanker support. as well as their current the water rescue resources they have to help supplement a problem if we were to have one on the river. Any other questions?
Chief, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I know you
Have
got
a
to
good
go.
night. Yep,
Thanks for
thank
being here tonight. Sir Chief. I will mention too as well. You have seating in our conference room for anybody looking for a seat. We can turn the speaker on inside that conference room, and you'll still be able to see and hear everything that we're saying in here. Next up, we'll have Mindy McGee and Christian Hansen giving us an update on some street and park activity.
Good evening, Council. I know that you're aware that we've done some reorg and restructure within City Hall, so just wanted to give you a little bit of an update on that and bring Christian up. And I know that it said Chris Hale would join us tonight, and I apologize. He is at road school, getting up to date on all of the road and construction specs that NDOT will want us to adhere to. So important that he's there. So I'll just roll into that part of our reorg, which is Chris has completed his ERC training. That's employee responsible in charge for our contracts with NDOT, all of our road paving, federal grant stuff that we do, the safety grants as well. So I will reach out to NDOT and have him officially moved on to those contracts as ERC, and then he will move forward with those projects, and I will work with him on that until he's comfortable with what the plan is and what the specs are and getting bids out and construction underway. So that includes the 2 federal grants that we already have for Main Street construction work, the 2 safety grants that we have for East End calming and traffic signal updates, and then our recently announced very large CCMG project. So I think you have a copy of the letter from Governor Braun in front of you congratulating us. We have a unique opportunity, at least right now, to apply for $1.5 million for a project, which we would then match $1.5 million and get a $3 million road project out of that. We were awarded that. That is for the general obligation bond that the mayor brought to you at the end of the year. We got that all processed, so the match is in place. We have just been awarded the other $1.5 million, so we'll be investing $3 million. This is for the section of Main Street between Mill Street and Broadway. So it will be complete road resurfacing. We will fix any stormwater, any drainage, any underground stuff that needs to happen. Brian Jackson in our utility department is currently reviewing everything that sewer and water needs to do under there while we'll have it torn up or before we get it torn up. And then we'll be replacing sidewalks and looking at improving some drainage in some of those areas in that stretch as well. So we're considering that phase 1 of Main Street reconstruction. That will kick off. The bid documents are being prepared right now, so that will be a this summer project. So the Main Street headache is about to begin, but it will be all wonderful when it's done. So that's my update on that. And then
Before we go on to
Sure.
with Christian, just mention that from a timing perspective, we're going to do the best we can, working around all
Yes.
the summer tourism.
yes,
But we have a construction season that we have to meet
yes.
in order to meet our deadlines, and then maybe talk about the safety grants and intersection improvements as well.
Okay, wasn't sure if you wanted me to talk
Yep,
about that.
might as well throw it out there.
Yeah, so from a timing standpoint, it's always a little bit tricky. We do have a window when asphalt plants are open that we have to stay within and get everything else done, because that's the last piece that they do. So my biggest goal is to have the pavement on by 1st of November. If we wait until after regatta, that gives us a real short window to get the concrete work done and any other things that we might run into when we start pulling up what's been there for I don't know how many years. So we are probably going to get started as soon as the bidding process is done and the bid is awarded. We will work with that contractor to probably get started on some things that aren't in the roadway and get preliminary work done, and then try to figure out where we are in the timeline so that we don't disrupt regatta, Chautauqua, all the other things that happen in our wonderful city but make it a little challenging to do construction on Main Street. So suggestions are always welcome, but we're going to do the best we can to manage that in the least obstructive way. Safety grants for mostly on the east end. So our traffic signal upgrades at Main and West and Main and Mulberry will be brand new signaling, brand new audible crosswalks, and restriping of the crosswalks and the stop bars and things like that. It's a simple project, but it's really important from a safety standpoint. And those are the kind of improvements that are going to happen at every intersection on Main Street so that we can make it safer for our pedestrians to cross. And east end traffic calming seems to be the easiest one, and it's the hardest to get it done. So NDOT gave us approval, they gave us a permit to restripe on the east end to calm the traffic to match what they did coming off the bridge. We had bids to do it outside the grant, and they came in too high. So now they're preparing the bid again. We will rebid that and hopefully get that done as soon as the weather holds at a temperature that we can get the thermoplastic to stick for that. So any questions on any of our most immediate upcoming?
Yes, on
road
the Main
projects.
Street,
Yes.
does it also include the sidewalks?
Yes, it's not a complete pull them out and redo them. We walked, the mayor, the engineers, Tony, we walked and decided, which ones really need to be redone. There's different places where there's pull-ins that we don't need anymore, things like that, those kind of details. We walk through that. The engineers have all that information. They are putting some drawings together for us, so happy to share those with you if you want to see what that will look like. But we will do as much as we can where needed.
Okay, thank you.
And curbs, gutters.
Curbs, gutters, we will upgrade. There's a couple of places
Ramps.
where
Handicap accessible ramps.
all drainage, goes south of the river. And because Main Street's been paved over and over and over, it doesn't drain properly anymore. So we will fix all of that. And there might be some creative trough drains there, specifically by Josh's house. I know on the north side is one that we're looking at. So we're going to try and do some different things to make sure that drainage off Main Street happens the way it should.
Introduction to Christian.
All right.
Other questions from Mindy?
Christian, I know you probably all know, but Christian was, prior to this sort of parks reorg, in charge of our golf course greens and making it look beautiful, which it always does. But he's sort of an underutilized talent, and with the parks reorg, Christian, well, I don't know that you volunteered. We discussed it, right?
We discovered his talents and recruited him.
He ended up volunteering. But he agreed to take on a team to basically be our groundskeeper for the town. And I know that Christian has a lot of talent, that's his background, and will do a great job. It will also help balance what our street department does because they do so much. And Christian, I'll let him explain. I think you've got 3 teams that you're going to work with. I'll let him explain the structure of all of that. But I think he's going to do a great job and make not just the golf course, but our entire town look beautiful.
Thank you. Welcome, Christian.
Thank you. Just to introduce, I'm Christian Hansen. I'm a lifelong resident of Madison. I'm an alumni of Madison High School. I love this town. I want to thank you for this opportunity. I've worked in design, build, landscape my whole career. I've worked on hundreds of properties in Jefferson County, and I consider right now I have the crown jewel of the job that I've always wanted to deal with. I was lucky enough to work at Hanover College for several years, and now that I have the Madison Parks Department, I'm really, really excited about this. So thank you for that. Mindy talked about I'm going to take this on as I would as a for-profit job. I've got a crew that's at the golf course that we've built, and they're wonderful. I wouldn't have taken this job if I wasn't comfortable leaving some of the places that I need. So the golf course is going to be status quo as it is. I've got a crew that's going to stay dedicated to athletic fields to try to get our athletic fields back up to where they were when I used them as a kid. As my kids came through the Parks Department, I was a little disappointed with them. I would like I would like to get them back to where they need to be. I know there's renovations and all that are talking, but in the meantime, our kids still need a place to play and a place that's safe, and that's my main goal this summer. I've spent the last 2 years at Sunrise trying to get it where I want it to be. I feel very comfortable there. Rucker and John Paul and Kiwanis that's my focus moving forward. And as far as the other 28 parks that we have, I've got a wonderful relationship with the Department of Correction girls. That's who's going to be working and taking care of all of our city parks. And I want to try to elevate this as much as I can to, and you know, we're having a conversation today about a horticultural program within the city. We take care of our own things, and I have people that work for the city that have ownership in the city that want to see these parks come back. So, I mean, I've got long ideas, but the first and foremost in the immediate future is to get it back, to get Rucker and the sports fields back to where they're playable, get our kids back playing on safe, kids and adults both. I have vivid memories of Kiwanis Park and John Paul Park when I was a young man, and I want to get that back. The city needs that, so that's kind of a short round of what I have. We've got a lot to do, but I'm very energetic to do it, and I've got a great team that I've started to assemble to do this, so I can answer any questions.
I would just like to emphasize that we have still instructed Christian that the golf course is his baby still. Like, I don't want the golfers to think that we're ripping him away and that anything will change at Sunrise. It'll still be a priority, but now we're hoping the rest of our parks can look as beautiful as Sunrise.
I start my day every day at Sunrise Golf Course, and I end my day every day at Sunrise Golf Course. I've played golf there my whole life. There's still a lot to do at Sunrise Golf Course. So I plan to do the other ones just like I did that. That I want the rest of our parks to look like Sunrise. Sunrise is one of our parks. It's probably our crown jewel of a park, but the rest of them need the TLC too. And we can do it.
We look forward to seeing that, Christian.
All right, thank you.
Were you going to discuss Main Street flower beds while you're up there?
Yes.
Are you ready to discuss that?
Yes, kind of.
We thought we'd throw
Not
in,
gonna throw him to the
thought
wolves.
we'd,
Come back.
thought we would throw in a little, mix it up a little bit. Or I should say mulch it up a little bit.
Yeah, we're going to continue the process of what we've done in the past. And again, this is kind of a bridge gap from when we can take control of it to when construction is, to where we're not, everything's so spread out, and it makes a little bit more sense. So the hanging baskets will be a staple along Main Street. The intersections and the urns and the planters, as we've come accustomed, those will still be there. Some of the plant beds along Main Street are going to change a little bit. It's almost impossible to grow anything in them. They're just beat to death. It's very hard to get anything to grow in them. If you're on the north side, you're in shade all the time. If you're on the north side, you're in sun all the time. If you're on the south side, you're in shade all the time. It's really hard to manage that and to water it. And just in the past, it's just been a... So
And many of them are just not ideally located.
They're not.
They're
not. I mean, it's really become more of a hazard than it has a beautification part, because people walk through them. They open their car doors and they have to walk through them. There's dogs. There's all kinds of dog traffic. There's a lot of issues that go along with plant beds on a high traffic area, and it's not suited very well for them. So a lot of them will be refilled with brick. We'll put the brick sidewalks back. Some of the ones that are larger will do some plantings, still do some plantings and some mulching, to try to we want some color. We don't want to just stagnant and stale, but the beds along Main Street in the brick area are going to reduce.
And we've already made there were 71 when we started this, and we reduced it, which is ridiculous.
71 just between Broadway and Jefferson
Broadway
Street.
and Jefferson Street, yes. So we reduced that down to about 57 by using a combination of rebricking some, putting permanent mulch in some, because the doggies still need a place to go, and planting the rest. And I think when we got done walking, I think we're probably somewhere between 25-ish that will have something in it, something green in it.
And we've kind of chosen more of an evergreen ground cover. It's big blue lily turf or larivi, and then maybe splash some color in those just to give it a pop. But again, the high traffic areas, they'll beat them to death.
It's very labor intensive as well. Last year was a really hot summer, We had waterers that were honestly coming in at midnight, watering overnight because it's the best time to do it, but they were watering twice a day, and we could not keep up with it. It was just too hot. It's surrounded by too much concrete and asphalt and cars, and they just get abused.
Well, in transparency, it's how full circle it is. I was on the crew that laid the brick along Main Street 25 years ago or whenever it was, and there was no plant beds in the drawing. There was tree wells with tree grates, and it's expanded to this, so it was way off of its original design and concept, and it was designed that way for a reason because of high traffic and the parking. There's a few of them that were liabilities, and they still are. We'll try to address that as fast as we can.
Any questions for either one of them? And before you go, would you mind just tipping that microphone up just a tad? There you go. There we go. No, I think it's very worthwhile. And keep in mind, what we're building up to is the final phase of our Main Street corridor reconstruction, which will probably be around 2030. So we're going that way first and then coming back for the Central Business District because it's going to be the most expensive, the most difficult, and we have not secured the funding for it, but it's part of the planning stage over the next several years. But there's a build up to what we're getting to, and it's going to take years to get there.
Well, there's a common theme in that, that we're going to work really well with what we have and try to get back what we have until we can replace it. And a lot of that, it goes to John Paul. I've spoken with all the leagues about that. Just be patient with us. We're going to do as best we can, but I hope to replace this park someday. It's the same thing with the plant beds along Main Street. It's in the process.
Perfect. Thank you both.
Thank you.
All right. Will we get back to our normal agenda? We do not have any presentation petitions, so we'll go to resolutions or bills. We do have two bills on first reading. Our attorney, Joe Jenner, is on the phone, and we'll introduce the first ordinance. I'll ask Clerk Treasurer Niersen to introduce the first bill, and I'll give an overview, and then Dewey O'Neill, our Code Enforcement Officer, is going to work with me on a presentation we have for council and for our community. Yep. And this first bill, go ahead.
Sorry. So ordinance number 2025-4, an ordinance of the City of Madison adopting standards regarding vacant and abandoned structures.
Yes, so this will establish a vacant and abandoned structure registration and standards for maintenance. It is sponsored by Krebs, Schaefer, Wilbur, Bartlett, and Storm. And for the community, as you know, we have been, I think, relentless in our pursuit of a clean, safe, and beautiful community over the last 5 years. In fact, in the last 5 years, with our changes to the PACE program, we have worked in partnership with property owners on about 222 structures, and there's been about $17 million invested with between the city and the county contributions, redevelopment contributions, and especially our property owners in bringing their properties back to life. And many of them were dilapidated structures. This ordinance is intended to work in conjunction with other ordinances the city has already adopted. Unsafe building ordinance, our nuisance ordinance, our PACE ordinance, as I mentioned. And it's intended to focus on working with property owners on a plan for their properties, eliminate the blighting effect of a property, as well as stabilize and improve our neighborhoods. Over the course of the last 3 years, as Dewey will discuss as we get through here, we've also managed almost over 1,175 nuisance cases across the community since we had created the Office of Code Enforcement. The nuisance and the vacant and abandoned and blighted properties is a real chronic issue in our community that we've been addressing. And the way to address it is with good policies, funding, ways to attract capital, and the most important thing is to work with the property owners who own those properties. And we're to the point now where we have to address those properties that are chronically vacant and abandoned, that are not being improved by their property owners. And so the goal of this ordinance is to establish a registration system as well as minimum standards for maintenance so that we can eliminate the blighting effect of these chronically vacant and abandoned properties on our community, with the goal of having them all contribute to a more beautiful Madison and certainly a more vibrant neighborhood. So with that said, I will introduce, before that, I want to also mention, Council, you have this, but the Board of Public Works and Safety yesterday adopted Resolution 2025-12B, which was a resolution supporting Council's adoption and making the recommendation that it adopt standards for vacant and abandoned structures. We do have a presentation. We'll go through the presentation. We'll open it up to comments by council, and then we'll invite members of the community to make remarks relative to the proposed ordinance. For our audience who is here tonight, there is a 2-reading process. This is the first reading. We allow public comment on all of our bills and resolutions, both at this meeting and then at the second meeting where it would be voted upon, and that will be Tuesday, April the 8th. So we invite your input and your help, and we have some great examples across our community we're going to walk through here in a minute.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of things before we get started. I'm glad Christian was here, and the golf course is getting together because I got to get the mayor out there and get his game together before.
What game?
Yeah,
Got to have a game first.
The chamber tournament's coming up, 6-7 weeks. So,
True.
Also, I get to speak to you. Good evening, by the way. So infrequently, I'm glad we can bring a crowd out like we always do. I have been, so the mayor was talking about a little history. I started January 3rd, 2022, and the first conversation we had, I was sitting in the office right over here, and the mayor talked about, he's an avid Beastie Boys fan, and we talked about fighting the blight. So that's kind of
song there.
Yeah, if you're familiar with Beastie Boys. And I think really my position was created here to focus on the nuisance and blight and things that go along with it. So I'm very excited to be here. I've been researching this for a couple of years. I hope what we do tonight is and I'm here with Brian Shaw, our building inspector. Where's he at? Here. I hope what we do is bring you on a little journey from where we've been, where we are now, and where this ordinance will take us to. So it really, I think what you're going to see provides a benefit to all the citizens of Madison. It's really the right thing at the right time. So with that, I will get started. What we're talking about is adopting standards for vacant and abandoned structures. And we'll do a little defining here, first of all. What is an abandoned structure? And I'll be honest, I don't have my glasses. I have one contact in, so I'm going to read off of this a little bit and do that. So no laughing out there. Don't do any of that. I mean, I know what they are, but just so we can talk about them. So an abandoned structure, a building or structure or parcel of real property in the city of Madison. Regarding commercial properties, a vacant structure on commercial real property that is used or was previously used for industrial or commercial purposes and that has not been used for legal purposes in at least 6 months. And that's really a key time frame here with both commercial and residential property. It's a 6-month time frame for them to be abandoned. Let's talk about vacant structures a little bit as well. Vacant structure is a building or structure, maybe I can read that, on a parcel or real property that is not being occupied by an owner, tenant, or others authorized by the owner, which lacks the habitual presence of such for a period of at least 90 days. A vacant, we do make exceptions here. Vacant structures do not include seasonal properties where you come and go, those that are in the military possibly, and then buildings which are being properly maintained in accordance with the standards, the minimum standards defined in this ordinance. Okay? All right, Mindy. Actually, let's go back, Dewey. So, why do we need to address these issues? You'll see on the right-hand side a lot of cases that I've dealt with. The mayor talked about, in the 3 years I've been here, over nearly 1,200 cases. Those are just nuisance cases. Those are not abandoned and vacant structure cases, additionally adding to that number. Our universe began with nearly 180 vacant and abandoned structures. And when we started looking at things, we called them unsafe at that point because we have an unsafe building law that we go by, the building inspector and I. And the number reduced over time because we decided they may not, part of the unsafe building law states that if something's been vacant for 6 months or longer, it's automatically considered unsafe. Well, some of them might not necessarily be unsafe, but they are vacant and abandoned. So we reduced that number quite a bit, and we're currently at 80 plus structures, which 25 of those roughly are what we consider unsafe. We need to go anything more there, Bob?
No.
Oh, okay. All right, let's take a look at the maps. I began plotting 2.5 years ago every structure that we considered unsafe, abandoned, neglected, and this represents the entire city. You can see the concentration downtown, but in each of your districts there are at least one property that is abandoned or vacant. Okay? We further broke it down by districts. District 1, again, just the concentration of the older structures downtown is where you see most of the properties. District 2, okay, Mindy. District 3 is a little distorted as you see there, but still you get the idea. District 4 and District 5. Okay, let's go through the steps of the registry and the abatement. There are two key things here. The enforcement authority, and we'll get to that here in just a second, we find the structure in this case, and the enforcement authority issues an order to the property owner to register on this registry. Or the owner can also voluntarily register with us. Within 14 days, the owner of the structure submits paperwork to register within 14 days, but there's also the ability to challenge within 30 days any order that we may issue or if they don't register. Within 30 days of that order or them registering, we are asking that the property be secured by the standards that we have come up with within the ordinance. Within 60 days, following a voluntary registration or an order from us, the property must comply with the standards of maintenance during that time. If the enforcement authority does the work to do that, then we will go through, we will give the property owner, we'll take care of securing it. We'll give the property owner time to essentially pay our contractors invoice. And then if that doesn't happen, we'll go to a lien process possibly. Violations and penalties, failure to comply with the ordinance within 90 days will result in penalties unless certain conditions are met. A removal of the registry properties that comply with the standards for maintenance and are secure from entry can be removed from the registry. Simply occupying the property after declaration that is vacant and or abandoned does not relieve the owner of responsibility to comply with the standards for maintenance.
Do I might just interject here real
Please,
quick?
yeah.
And that is, we're establishing the steps for registration and implementing the minimum standards for maintenance. So if If those steps are followed, there is no registration fee and there is no penalty. So I just want to reemphasize that the goal here, isn't to be punitive. It is to work with the property owner to eliminate the blighting effect of a property that has been determined to be vacant and or abandoned. And you can see the sequence here, which is at 90 days you're vacant, 6 months you're abandoned. And those are definitions that come from the state statute that enable us to adopt this local ordinance. They tell us exactly what we have to follow relative to the definitions, and then we have to establish the procedures. So, really what I want to emphasize here is every neighborhood, all of us go around our neighborhoods and we see a property here or there that clearly fits this definition that's been chronically vacant or abandoned, in some instances for decades. And they've blighted our neighborhoods. Now what we're trying to do is put a procedure in place to reverse that and
Right.
also do it in a way to where it's not punitive at all.
Yes, correct. So let's talk about who's going to administer this. Go ahead, Minnie. There are two entities here, the Enforcement Authority, which is the Office of Planning, Preservation and Design, primarily our Director of Planning, Nicole Schell, myself as the Code Enforcement Officer, and Brian Shaw as your Building Inspector. The Hearing Authority, as just about everything is in our office, is the Board of Public Works in this case. Let's talk about the standards of maintenance and what they look like. We want to ensure that the property is inspected and secured against unlawful entry with locks, the boarding of windows or doors which meet the standards within the ordinance of a vacant and/or abandoned structure is to be considered temporary, the boarding is, and the property is clean, vegetation is mowed, basically there's no nuisance cases happening here. The exterior premises area shall be maintained in accordance with the City of Madison's Chapter 90 Abandoned Vehicles Law, which we enforce. Chapter 96, the nuisance cases that I also enforce. Chapter 98, Streets and Sidewalks, which Brian works with a bit. And then all relevant state, federal, and local laws as well. And then all accessory structures. We're not talking just, primary things. We're talking accessory structures shall be maintained structurally sound and repaired as not to be dangerous, unsafe, unsanitary, or otherwise unfit for human use. All right. What are the standards for maintenance? Keep continuing. All exterior surfaces shall be maintained in good condition, shall be free from holes, breaks, loose or rotting materials, maintain weatherproofing, and properly surface coated where required to prevent deterioration. Exterior surfaces shall be protected from the elements and decay by painting or other protective covering or treatment. Peeling, flaking, fading, or chipped paint shall be eliminated and surfaces repainted. The roof and flashing shall be sound, tight, and not have defects that admit rain. Roof drainage shall be adequate to prevent dampness or deterioration in the walls or interior portion of the structure. Inappropriate or temporary roofing coverings, including but not limited to tarps, shall be deemed inadequate protection and not uniform, and as such shall be prohibited by a period exceeding 30 consecutive days. And finally, the structure shall be weatherproof with appropriate materials. Tarps, house wrap, tar paper, and visqueen are not acceptable materials. Okay. Let's talk about some of the structures in different districts. Here's District 1. These are current cases that we have. I don't know how much we want to go into these just through the pictures.
I just want to zip through and there's
Yep.
dozens more than the few we're showing you.
Yeah, these are,
today.
there's no
Dozens more.
dozens more, okay? This is obviously downtown. This is on the Hilltop, Craigmont area, right? Okay, Mindy. West end of downtown, and actually the one on the right is, District 3 is
State Hospital, the one up on the
Yeah,
right.
State Hospital.
Top, all right.
Yeah, right next to the DSI folks. District 4, Frank's Drive, and Hargan, I believe it is. And then this would be on the Banta Avenue, and then the West Clifty, next to Dr. Britt's office over there. So, okay. The progress that we've made. Here are some, I believe, some really striking before and afters. This, of course, is the hotel downtown. I'll let Bob talk more about this. This is before my time, but this is the 700 block of Mulberry.
North Mulberry Street. Yeah,
Yeah.
those three buildings on the left were like that for decades.
Okay.
And now, again, a lot of great transformation with property owners, and in many instances, new property owners.
This is the 500 block of Walnut, give or take.
Yeah, and there is an exception here relative to length of time with regards to a fire-damaged property.
Oh, yes. Yep. Okay. 700 block of Walnut Street. This is one of the most striking to me. We identified this, the previous building inspector and I went through there, and though not complete, it's quite a transformation. I believe the gentleman is here this evening who owns this little store somewhere. Yeah. Okay. How about this? Anybody tell me where that's at? That's actually at the dead end. Shoot, now I'm going to challenge myself what the name of the street is. Yeah. Exactly. Lorenz would be to the right of this. But that picture there on the left was 2022, late 2021. Okay, Mindy. This is on Wood Street. You can't even see the structure when I came upon it. And Carl and I have talked about this a number of times. Quite striking there. And then this is the River Tower, that one's called River Tower area. So, yes, and the catchphrase being clean, safe, and beautiful. That is what I have for you tonight. The questions will come.
So, Council, let's
Or
go
comments.
into your comments if you have any. You've had an opportunity to review this, and we've met over the course of the last year on what our major policy initiatives are, and this is one. It took a lot of work to construct this so that we meet the needs of our community, but it's really focused on collaborating with property owners. Entertain some council remarks, and then we can open it up to some audience comments.
I have a few questions here, and some of these are just clarifications. I've been gone for the last week and a half, so I just got to review this today. What is the role of the Historic District Board of Review for properties in the Historic District, and how would that affect the timelines for repair on those?
Well, and Bob can chime in too, but I will say that anything that the building inspector, make sure I'm getting this right, deems unsafe, and maybe Brenna can talk to this too, I know she showed up, that those, I won't say there, I mean, what the building inspector states is something that unsafe kind of negates anything from the historic board.
It's
Fair.
a separate structure, or a separate process.
True, yeah.
This ordinance is establishing minimum standards for what they need to do with the property to not only eliminate the blighting effect as what we've described, but also address any, unsafe issues that might be with it.
Well, yeah, but
Yeah.
it could also, with windows and doors and
Sure.
that sort of thing, but a big issue for the historic district. So how would something like that play in? And if the city was to come in and have to make these repairs on behalf of the owner, would the city go through the COA process? Or
Well, we probably would count on our design guidelines that exist. That is also in the building and planning office. And
I think it can't be emphasized enough, Patrick, that, what we're doing, is really trying to create plans. I think Bob mentioned that. It's the planning, working in good faith and coming up with plans with property owners. So I don't know if that helps.
Okay. Then with some definitions with non-residential structures like garages, carriage houses, and you kind of touched on those a little bit, but structures that were never intended to be occupied.
Right.
Those, I assume the occupation type requirements would just not apply, but still the basic maintenance would apply to those.
Yes.
And how would those be, how would it be determined if a property needs to be on this list because it was never occupied, so how could it be considered vacant or abandoned?
You're talking about for an accessory structure?
Yeah, like well, because there's certain, especially in my district downtown, there's like garages and carriage houses that exist on their own parcel, or there's no residential structure on that parcel with it, so how would structures like that be treated?
Not sure if I really understand the question. If it is, if the lawful use for it is residential or commercial, and it is not occupied for these time periods that here, it would be subject to this ordinance.
So,
It'd be a
so
separate.
somebody's carriage house downtown, if it
Yeah.
happens to be on a separate parcel, would have to become a residence.
No, because this applies to any structure. Any structure.
But my question though is with the occupation type standards
Yeah.
of it. What would classify those sorts of structures as vacant or abandoned? So,
Not having, if it is a carriage house that is intended to be occupied but isn't occupied, then it would fall under this ordinance. And then we would have that determination be made by our building inspector and the building planning department. So I think the example you're giving with the carriage house, that is another structure on the property.
or garage or
Yeah.
something similar.
Right.
Because I know there's several carriage house type
And keep in mind
buildings
too
around
is that,
town.
this is primarily focused on the main structures. If there are accessory structures that are unsafe or a nuisance, those would also apply. So I think you're raising a good point of clarification, and we'll use our best judgment relative to whether or not that an accessory structure falls under this or it falls under a UBL or nuisance.
Regular
ordinance.
nuisance,
So it
okay.
says real property that has not been used for a legal purpose for at least 6 consecutive months. So any legal purpose, storage of a vehicle, whatever should be.
Right, so we're, Brian's mentioned, take the example of a garage. If it's not typically garage storage, right, or vehicle storage, and if it's not fit for that purpose, then it would be subject to this.
That's
Sense?
a good example, what Josh described
Yeah.
too.
Okay. Few concerns I had about some wording in here. This would be pages 7 and 8 of the ordinance. Regarding the, peeling, flaking, fading, and chipped paint. Certain issues like that delve into the cosmetic side of things and don't necessarily reflect an unsafe structure, which to me is what the heart of this is
Well, the heart of this is
about.
actually blight. It could be, you could have a structure that falls under this ordinance that isn't unsafe, but it is vacant and abandoned and boarded up and not being maintained. So we do want the opportunity, again, we're trying to deal with a chronic problem.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I just want to get to your point is that, we're not going to go out there and try to fix up 80 some odd properties. We're going to work with the property owners on the worst of the worst first and work our way through it. And also use our incentive programs to work with the property owners to do the work themselves. We hope they do it. But we do want some of these structures that are to be painted. They need to be painted. That could be the one thing that eliminates the blighting element of the property. And if you've got this fading, chipping, cracking, or holes in your siding, for example, we're going to ask you to repair it.
Well, paint, it serves an aesthetic form, but it also serves an exterior function.
Yes.
In certain circumstances. I had a conversation with a member of the historic preservation community over the weekend, and there are certain property, brick structures in particular, that don't need to be painted.
Correct.
Not necessary. So I just, it seems like stuff like this delves into it becoming more of a we don't like the way it looks, so we're going to use the law to push for changes based on our personal aesthetic preferences.
Well, there's always there's always the opportunity for a property owner to appeal an order. And if they feel like the work that we want to do, or we're asking them to do, is not applicable, they can come to the Board of Public Works and Safety. So we're trying to create that process, but again, the emphasis here is, it's not the gotcha, it's the, what can we do to improve that structure and help these neighborhoods transform? All these neighborhoods want to transform, and it's happening. But some of these properties are holding it back, holding back the neighborhoods.
I agree.
We'll do the best we can.
No, I agree. You know, and that's not, there's certain parts of this that I find might be a little bit much. It's a bit of a stretch for the government to ask people if they've got chipped paint on their house to go out and paint their house. As a proponent of limited government, there needs to be a line drawn. And this, the intent of this ordinance, I completely agree with. There's a lot of structures that need help. The standards for preventing structures from being used for, squatters and homeless people and places that encourage vagrancy and that sort of thing, great. But we've got to be very careful at drawing a line between an overreach of government, which I feel part of this is getting very close to being in certain sections. Other sections, obviously I have no qualms about, but flaking paint just, to me, it gets to a point where it's just.
On the flaking paint, though, that won't apply to a occupied building.
Well, but they just said it could be occupied. If it doesn't meet the maintenance standards, then it doesn't matter if it's occupied or not.
All of those parts of the definition.
Yeah, occupying alone won't remove that.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, and I think, there always is the concern of encroachment with any law or standard or practice. I think what I saw with this is, as you kind of raise the bar, you kind of set provisions to make sure that it doesn't dip back down again. But with that, we want to make sure that we're not encroaching on those things. And I think that there's some discretion in here where, you can petition against this, and it can be on record and it can be heard. So I would be worried if we could just steamroll, like if we were just to say, hey, it's our way, sorry, nothing you can say. But it sounds like there's several phase lines, to get to that.
Yeah, there are. I agree with you there, but there's still just provisions of this that I personally, based on my philosophy of how the government should interact with its community, it seems a bit of a stretch for me. That painting just, it's sticking. I mean, we don't even mandate paint in our historic district ordinance, and that's been a pretty
Well, these are
ordinance.
very special circumstances. I can tell you, with the very small resources that we have in our building and planning office, this is something we have to be very intentional about and strategic so that it makes the impact that we want it to make. I'm not concerned at all about, potential government overreach. I think we all agree. We need to do better, and we have some problem properties across our city that we have to create a plan for. And this is new, but as we get into this and we establish processes and that level of collaboration, Councilman, I think that, your observations will be important at that moment in time. Is it working? Is it having the intended outcome? Are we getting a lot of resistance? What can we do to make the process better? We just started code enforcement 3 years ago, and
That was a mistake.
Well, that brings me to my next point here about council following up on this and seeing if how it's working. So page 9 at the top, the quarterly report from the Office of Planning, I would like to see that also be presented to the council as well as the Board of Public Works quarterly, just so we can keep tabs on this
I don't have a
ordinance.
problem with that. All that information's available.
It's just, this is just a more frequently attended meeting from the public, and it's, in my opinion, easier for the council to receive this information if it's presented to us. So I would move that we amend page 9, that would be under registration fee C7, to add, to change the wording to include Board of Public Works and Safety and the City Common Council, a quarterly report.
Isn't there actually there's a fund, or aren't we going to establish a fund for any of the remittances or payments or penalties or stuff?
We'll have a vacant abandoned structure non-reverting fund.
Okay.
For collection of fees and penalties to support the ordinance enforcement through building and planning.
Okay.
I think your motion needs to be in writing.
Patrick, I'm not necessarily
Amendment needs to be in writing.
opposed to that, but I'm just curious if it's in our lane, if the information's there, but if we're seeing the bottom line effects on that, what specific information would pique your interest?
I think it's just the
Just everything
information,
within that registration?
described there. I think because this is a very large and new ordinance, and it could have a large financial effect on people in the community, I think it's important that we know what's going on with it, and we're able to ascertain the effects that it's having. I just think it would be important for us to have that information.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm just saying that we do give regular updates on our light elimination strategies, both to Board of Public Works and to City Council. May I ask you maybe to condense your motion into writing, or your amendment into writing, and we do it at the
Present it at the next, that's fine, yeah,
If that's
yeah,
okay?
yeah, I can do that.
All right, thank you.
I believe I had one more. Sorry, my notes are scattered here. Oh, in terms of work that would be done by the city, so it goes through the process, the property owner isn't responsive, and the city deems it necessary to perform the work.
Yes.
How are contractors selected to do that work, and is there a bid process, or how would that work?
I think in this instance,
Not for this dollar amount that we're talking about. If it's a dollar, there are public bidding laws that would be followed if it got to that dollar amount, but not at 10,000. We have 10,000 here. If it's over 10,000, it goes to the Board of Public Works for them to actually issue the order. And we do have a contractor that does the minimal work, and we follow the limits that are already in our unsafe building law. But
Okay.
we would follow all public bidding laws.
Okay. And is there before that work would be done, at any dollar amount, I know at 10,000 it would have to be a BPW hearing, but is there any kind of like registered letter that's sent to the homeowner prior to that work beginning?
so yes, good question. I would send we can make it certified, I suppose. I don't know if we delineate.
Well, we follow the same process.
Same
you're doing
process
in
as
the
nuisance case.
Is it? Yeah, well, yeah, I know, yeah, that part I read, but it was that last step before the city would perform potentially, up to $10,000 worth of work. Any kind of registered letter would be sent just to inform them, especially given the state of some of the mail delivery these days.
Well, understood. The only time I currently send a registered letter is once we've already completed the work, or, a nuisance case, or we have secured a property on the hilltop. But that's currently when I would send a registered letter, or certified. Am I getting the same?
But the way this is written, though, there is no registered letter would be sent before.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
We do say, it says we'll send a notice by certified mail.
Okay.
If we're going, I'm sorry, I'm on page 10. If assessment costs for remediation are 10,000 or greater, an order shall be issued by the hearing authority.
Well, that would just be for civil action to
Yeah.
recoup the cost.
I mean, we'll follow the same process we do currently with the nuisance ordinances.
Mayor?
And we'll make
Are you
every
asking-
effort to reach out to again, we don't want to do the work. It's pain. It really is.
Mayor?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but I wanted to just mention, the legal counsel is on the phone, and it is really difficult to hear in this room when you're on this phone. The sound sort of bounces around. So if we could keep the sidebar conversations to a minimum or out in the lobby, that would be helpful to him. I'm
Okay.
just afraid if he gets called on, he can't hear what is being discussed.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, so is the intent for this ordinance to be filed in the normal code of ordinances or as a appendix ordinance the way we do with the historic board or the historic guidelines, for instance?
No, it'll have its own,
So-
it'll
Chapter.
be codified, yes.
Yes, so I think, do we need to have that in there prior to passage?
I mean,
Maybe
we
that's a
normally
question.
don't. We give it to the American Public Library, and then they put it in the section and chapter of our codes based on the ordinance and the content. So we've never defined the chapter before.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Anything else, council?
Anything else?
One item I'll try to read through it again after this, but registration fee, section B, it doesn't clarify where the 14-day clock starts for registration without a fee.
After they receive.
Somewhere, it's earlier in the ordinance, it kind of does, but we may want to
Okay.
look at clarifying that in that particular section so that there's no question about
What page is that, Councilman?
page 8, registration fee, section B, paragraph B.
Okay.
We may just want to add a clarifying statement there, and like I said, I'll reread it and see if I have any recommendations, but
I think you bring up a very valid point. It says under section B that 14 days are required, and you might not get a letter in the mail for 14 days.
I think it does say receipt of notice earlier in the ordinance, but there just might be a little bit of clarity for when that clock starts that might be beneficial.
I agree.
Thank you. And if you have some recommended amendment, we'll bring it to the
Yeah,
next.
I will look at that a little closer and
read.
see if I can give you some
Okay.
recommendation.
Thank you.
It's a very well-written document. Somebody spent a lot of time on this. So,
Thank you.
and it's a very necessary document. It's the only way we're going to solve some of the problems. When I looked at my district and some of those pictures, I've been trying to talk to those owners for years with no response, telling me to mind my own business, and received numerous complaints from the neighbors who were concerned about their property value and the safety of their community.
It's been a team effort over the course of the last 12 months, and thank you for your remarks about what we thought was thoughtful, but also impactful.
You're welcome to join the code enforcement team. It's a struggle every day, Lucy.
One last question I have for probably the mayor, but in the state code, there are different avenues that can be taken for vacant and abandoned structures. We've basically chosen to have the same penalties and the same process for both in its entirety. We don't in the extreme case that somebody has an abandoned structure, that they don't do anything to abate the issue, the state code, based on my understanding of it, allows eventual forced sale, and we don't deal with that at all, do we?
We've not gone there, but, the logical pattern is, we're trying to work this out so nobody accrues penalties,
Yeah.
right? But in the situation where penalties would accrue, the property owner would be asked to pay those penalties. If those penalties aren't paid, just like with a nuisance order where we have to do cleanup, then it becomes a lien on the property. Then if the taxes aren't paid, it's then subject to a tax sale. So we already felt like there's a logical process, but also a due process for those property owners who are incurring these penalties to pay when they get the invoice for the work, or to redeem their property if it actually goes through a tax sale process. So we felt like there was already due process there, that we didn't need to step into the role of trying to force a property to be sold. It would naturally occur if nothing was done.
Okay.
Yep.
I will stick around for any public comments if they have
All right, well,
questions.
We're going to move into a public comment section on this. We'll just ask those who are coming up to the podium to please state your name and address. Keep your remarks concise. I might add that if the person before you, or 2 or 3 times before you, is saying the exact same thing, you may not need to come up. But we appreciate everybody's remarks about the importance of this, but also about the ordinance itself.
I'm Debbie Beeman, 709 Walnut Street. I want to thank Dewey and this one for all the work that they've done over these past years. They have done a lot, but in my area, a lot more needs done. There are a lot of houses still abandoned. We can't assume that every owner cares about their property, because I'm here to tell you, they all don't. Like I said, I live on Walnut Street, and the struggle is real. Now, Walnut Street is changing a lot. There are a lot of people who have redone their places. They have them for sale. They're selling them at good prices, but there's just enough to make Walnut Street not great yet. And I just want to say to you all, I agree totally with these ordinances. I agree totally. Patrick, I don't agree with what you said, but I am all for this. Let's make Madison great. And if people don't want to do that because they don't want to put out a dime, then they can sell it. I live in a cheap area, and I've done all I can with my little house. And you know who's paid for my little house? Me. I don't get grants. I don't get this. I don't get that. I keep my house because it's my house. It's my property. If you don't want to take care of your property, then sell the thing or do some work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Matt Chandler, 111 East 2nd Street. I just want to speak on this a little bit from a business owner, entrepreneur perspective, because I think when we're trying to encourage economic development and people to come and invest in our city, it's important for them to feel safe, and that the buildings that they're purchasing or they're interested in, the neighboring buildings feel safe as well. I think for a lot of our people who are potentially trying to invest here, and some of our current business owners who are struggling with their neighbors with buildings that aren't being taken care of and are turning into blight, affects their business and affects them from an entrepreneurial standpoint, and also attracts homelessness and an unsafe type of environment for our city. So I just want to say that I think it's important for entrepreneurs, business owners, for economic development, that this ordinance moves forward, because it's going to ensure a safe city for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Matt. I want to mention too, relative to his comments about economic development in the neighborhood, but in the ordinance itself, there's essentially 9 recitals about the purpose behind this, and it is about all the things you mentioned. But if you do, if you take the time to read this ordinance, or you have very limited time, if you read the first 2 pages, you'll understand why we're doing it. That's what's set up in the first 2 pages. Sir?
I'm Robert Lofton. I live at 313.
There's no required sign-up sheet for this part of the ordinance. That's for the public comment at the end of the meeting. So sorry for the confusion.
Robert Lofton, 313 Hendrick Street, Madison. I've got a house next door to me at 307. It's been vacant since 2010. The roof's caved in, big tree fell on the roof, caved it in. I've had a hell of a time trying to get anything done, especially the grass bed cut when it gets up to waist high. Until the last 3 years, when Dewey and Brian started getting into it, and at least they've got the broken doors and the windows boarded up now. But according to them, that's as far as they can go. That's why they're trying to create this ordinance, I presume. But I'm surprised that there wasn't an ordinance before. What's taking you so long? I mean, this is ridiculous. He showed you the picture of the front of the house next to 307, or mine. He didn't show you the back. That's where all the damage is. That's where all the growth is. The neighbors, we've been mowing the front to make it look representative for the neighborhood. That's getting ridiculous. People, they wouldn't cooperate with me. They wouldn't cooperate with them. And by the way, you was talking about the owners would be legal for this, or rather
responsible.
What happens when they're dead? What are you gonna do then?
Mr. Levis, you've been to Board of Public Works and Safety a few times about this issue.
Oh yeah,
and
several times.
And we've been working on it, and you're highlighting a complication. And there are instances, and this isn't the panacea of all things vacant and abandoned, because there are properties that will not apply to it, this ordinance will not apply to, but it does make it very difficult when 2 things happen. A, you don't have a cooperative property owner, or you don't have a property owner, and it's stuck in limbo with a probate, and in that instance with Mr. Loftus, the executor of the estate of the deceased person also passed away. And so it created a very complicated sequence.
Where you go?
But I will tell you this, we haven't given up. We've listened.
Well, I know.
We've heard your
I know you
concerns.
have.
We've taken action up there, and now we know that we need more policy and capabilities to do more, and that's why we're here now.
Well, you've been at the Board of Works. These people up here haven't.
Yeah.
They don't live next to an abandoned house that raises cats and skunks and rabbits and snakes and whatever. It's ridiculous. That big oak tree right behind it right now, if that sucker goes down, it's going to go right through that house. Who's going to be responsible for the cleanup? I mean, this thing's been dead for 10 years, and the limbs fell off of it, put holes through the roof, no tarps are put on it, nothing. It's ridiculous. 2 winters ago, I had homeless people moving in there. I was to the point where I wished they would start a fire. Because the city was to the point where they couldn't do nothing.
Mr. Loftus.
It's ridiculous.
Thank you for your remarks. We're trying to keep it concise, but thank you very much, and we're doing the best we can to help you.
Hey, 718 East 2nd, Lisa Ferguson. I think this is a great thing. We've been excited that this is something coming. I've talked many times to particularly Trevor and Van Crafton, who are visionaries, who also have finances to put behind what they do. And we talk all the time about, living in a housing crisis. We do that because we have so many people that hold on to things that they either don't have the finances or the visions to do, or they don't care. In this room, I can look around and see Larry and Felicia are here, the Pittmans are here, Matt Chandler, who, I don't know how he comes up with the dreams he does, but, you got to give kudos to these people who are behind us, who backed this up long before you all started an ordinance. They were already on to this, and as a person who doesn't have the finances or the vision, I appreciate people who do. So kudos to you guys, because they came before us, before you all came up with what we've got to start implementing, because we will see in 5 more years how much farther this town will go with you all backing it up. So as a homeowner, a little bitty homeowner, I appreciate y'all doing this very much. And I appreciate you all coming before us to do it. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa.
Ken McWilliams, 315 Poplar, and I want to talk about the penalty section. And so I think the fines that you have in the ordinance are going to motivate a great many of these homeowners. But to use a phrase Bob always used, we have bad actors in town, and that's why we have to meet today. And their arrogance, their obstinates, these fines are not going to impact them at all. You're giving them a tax deduction. So I would like for you to delete the two lines that say there's a $5,000 season limit. Go down a couple clauses where it talks about the 90 days. The second 90 days, the fines double. The third 90 days, those fines double. And they keep doubling until you force these people to lawyer up. Now they've got hefty fines from the ordinance and the cost of lawyering up, and that motivates them to sell. And so I think if you do that, it's a win-win.
The state limits the penalties, so unfortunately, nothing we can do about it.
Secede, let's go to Kentucky. That's too bad.
Thank you. We are adopting in its entirety Indiana Code 36-7-9 that establishes definitions as well as penalties. And then what we're really implementing here, which is the 90% of the contract, is what's our procedure is going to be. But thank you, Ken, for your remarks.
Hi, I'm Felicia Crisafulli, 811 West First Street in Madison, and I want to thank all of you for considering this ordinance, and that was a great presentation, and thank you for the work that's been done on this from the planning department. There's one thing in particular that I think is missing from the definitions section, I think, of this, and I know walking up and down Main Street a lot, we talk about unoccupied or vacant buildings, but one of the things that we see with Main Street a lot are occupied vacancies, and that's kind of a strange term, but they're buildings that aren't really vacant. They're full of plenty of stuff, but they have turned into warehousing and storage. And these are as much of a concern for adjacent property owners and our property values as some of the vacant buildings are. And these buildings also tend to be not well maintained in our downtown. And there are also buildings and structures that are not regularly or ever open to the public. And I think they need to be part of this consideration as well, because these are buildings that need to be addressed. And Mayor, I want to thank you for your approach of formulating a plan to work with the property owners. I think that's the right approach. And thank you for doing that. And I think that could be done with all types of our underutilized structures downtown.
Yeah.
And I think everybody knows that the whole the teeth of this comes with the enforcement end of it. And so that needs to be emphasized, and I know that will fall on your shoulders and the shoulders of city officials, and that's not an easy task, but please do it. It's
Alicia,
very important.
let me address comes to first. I want to thank you, Larry, for your investments in historic preservation across our city. You've tackled some very difficult properties that have transformed blocks, so thank you for that. There's a holistic approach to this. And what we said earlier is we have a unsafe building law, we have a nuisance law. With this, we'll have a vacant and abandoned law. We also have fire safety. You've brought up a really good point, and the emphasis here is on if it's not being used for its legal purpose. So if you've taken a building, we have some structures in the heart of our downtown that are probably, I'm speculating, significant fire hazards, potentially. And what we're intending to do is work with our fire marshal and our building inspector and Dewey and others in building and planning, to also engage with those property owners so that we can inspect them for safety, not only for all of the surrounding properties, but particularly for our men and women who are first responders who have to go into these structures, very dangerous conditions, if they're not being used for the purpose intended, or if you take a building and you convert it into a storage or a hoarding situation is
Yes, exactly.
horrible. But we're trying to attack all of that with having
Thank
the tools to do it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm John DeLuca. My wife and I live at 210 West 2nd Street. I'd just like to say I fully agree with what the mayor is saying today. 120% support his effort over the past 15 years. I know you've not been mayor for 15 years, but I wish you would.
Been an investor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm concerned. I hear we started the meeting, we're talking about certain category of buildings, facilities, homes, whatever. I live in a, what do you call them, a duplex, and I had the opportunity to address this group. Excuse me, I've got something going on with my body. What I tried, and some of the men sitting over on this side tried to do to work on one specific house that I share a wall with. The owner of that building has lived in it about 55 years, refuses to do anything, and I've worked with your staffs here, and they've tried, they've write letters, and the people just say no, or they don't acknowledge it, anything. I personally offered to do work, as my neighbors have, to help this gentleman. Well, on January 7th, I think it was, Chief DeVries sent a great group of people to my house, firemen, because he fell asleep while he was cooking his dinner, and his house is essentially totaled now. My house is essentially got a brand new paint job. They've done a great job, and my USAA insurance company has paid me, or is going to get the money back from the owner of the house of $93,000 so far. So, and we did nothing, but that's just to remove soot. But nothing has changed about what's going to happen in the future at this particular location. I invite you all, when you're way out to your car, go up to the alley right over here. It's the second garage on the right, and it is the worst garage I've seen in the city so far. And Dewey, when he's got there, he says, I can't do anything about it because basically a man is his castle, or whatever that saying goes. So I just want to know how we can get occupied but neglected structures to be covered by the type of ordinance you're talking about here. That's it. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. Yeah, and just a quick response, and that is you have to use those other laws, unsafe building laws, and as well as our nuisance ordinances. And again, there's a lot of protections for property owners, rightfully so. So it doesn't address every possible situation. And in many instances, the engagement that we have to try to resolve a problem takes several years, unfortunately, several years.
Well, I just bring it up to get that in, and I know you're looking at it, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And good night.
Thanks, sir.
Angie Williams, 1117 West Main Street. One of the things that I noticed recently, I have two family members looking for homes to buy. And during going with them on the tours of the homes, the first thing that they said, number one, was, I don't want to live on Walnut Street. They didn't even want to look at houses on Walnut Street because of dilapidated and vacant homes.
I'm from Walnut Street, and it's a beautiful street.
It is.
I
It
would
looks
give them
great.
a private
It does
tour.
look. I told her.
Personal tour.
I told her. I said, go look again because it's becoming better. But there's a stigma with that.
Yeah.
I talked to a realtor last summer about selling my home, and recently talked to them last week about it again, and they said, well, do you still have that vacant home next door to you? So it does affect our housing, not just the owner of the homes, but the neighbors and everybody around it. And I know we have skunks living in our neighbor's building outside, and we've had other issues as well. And so we hope that this is finally, after 4 years. I think the house has been vacant for 4 years now at least. So we're hoping that this ordinance does something for that.
Thank you, Angie. Okay, any other public comments on 2025-4?
John, do I get to defend myself now?
He did. I want to thank everybody for their comments on 2025-4. And that will move to its second reading on April the 8th, which is the next city council meeting. Now, Clerk Treasurer, we'll move on to the second bill of the night, 2025-5.
Ordinance.
Thanks everybody for being here tonight too.
Ordinance 2025-5, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Madison, Indiana, to repeal and replace Section 70.04 of the City of Madison Code, Chapter 70, Section 70.04.
Sponsor is Councilman Schaefer, and I'll let him introduce it.
All right. So about a year and a half ago, I bought my first golf cart and decided that I'd better get familiar with what our ordinance says, because it'd be really embarrassing for a council person to get caught doing the wrong thing. As I started looking at it, I felt like while it was a good ordinance in a lot of ways, it was missing some details. I come from a background of working with regulations and technical requirements for vehicles and safety equipment, and so I felt like we needed to do a little bit of an update, so started working on that, and finally working with some of the others, the mayor's office and some others, gotten that wrapped up here recently. So the intent of these changes is not to make really any significant change to what is allowed or not allowed today. If you have seen a copy of the red line, it's a lot of definitions that have been added, a lot of clarifications. One of the things that you'll see is that there was, like I said, an added definition for golf cart, also defined what low-speed vehicles. For those who don't know, a low-speed vehicle is just a golf cart that can be licensed and goes a few miles an hour faster. So there's a little bit different requirements that the state allows for those. And then off-road vehicles, and kind of defining what the difference is between an off-road vehicle and a golf cart. There were several intersections around the city that I noticed as looking at the map that are perfectly safe to cross. They're stoplight controlled, but for some reason they did not make their way into the previous versions of the ordinance. So in an effort to open up better access to more residents of the city, tried to make sure we captured all those safe crossings so that we have fewer isolated areas. And then that also does include a small section at the very end of Main Street that was where the West End residents have been blocked off from being able to use a golf cart, and open that up as well. All of it on the non-state highway controlled areas. One of the other, let's see, that's probably the biggest changes. I had a lot of references back to the Indiana Code for those who are interested in seeing where our authorization comes from. One thing that I saw going around Facebook a little bit is that the changes here are going to allow off-road vehicle use on our city streets. That is not the case. Currently there is nothing in our city ordinances that either prohibits or allows off-road vehicles. So it has been kind of by default, that ambiguity has fallen to the Board of Public Works to say if or when an off-road vehicle can be used. So as part of this rewrite, it was very explicitly defined that the Board of Works does have that power. It's no longer an ambiguous power that they hold as just kind of generally overseeing our streets. They are the only ones who can decide if somebody could use an off-road vehicle, whether that is for a special event, somebody needing to use a gator to run ice up and down the river for an event, or whether that's the city garage running a gator down the street to water flowers. Or many of you maybe are aware of the Super ATV poker runs. Those are always already approved by BPW, and any future events like that will still have to be approved by BPW. So while there was a lot of definitions and I guess added references to off-road vehicles, there is no real change to how off-road vehicles can operate in the city. Just a lot of clarification and removing any gray area that may have existed before. I think that's all I have in terms of explanation.
Good clarifications. Thank you for taking the lead on that. Council, any other remarks on ordinance 2025-5?
So one of my concerns is the people, I don't like the golf carts on Main Street, I mean personally, but I know that there are people in town that paid pretty big bucks to get a VIN number and get a plate, and so I would like for us to consider just grandfathering in just for the duration of what they've paid for, being able to use theirs. You know, if I paid for a 2-year license, that they could finish their 2 years before the BMV, you know, like the BMV would not renew anymore. But I just hate to see those people who spent, you know, close to $1,000 to get a VIN number and a plate because they didn't know we were going to change that, because the state code says they can, but because we control Main Street, we have the authority to do that. I would just like us to consider grandfathering in those people just for that duration. Now the problem, well, okay, go ahead.
I guess there are key differences between a golf cart and the LSVs.
Right.
So are we 5 mile an hour difference in speed?
So are we still saying the LSV golf carts? Because my buddy has a golf cart that is labeled an LSV. Those would still be legal then?
So
with
LSVs are required to register with BMV no matter whether they're going on Main Street or not going on Main Street. They cannot be ran on any street in Indiana without being registered with BMV.
Has nothing to do with Main Street.
They have to have a license no matter where they go with that?
Because the NHTSA DOT defines a motor vehicle as any vehicle that can go above 20 miles an hour. And they specifically define LSVs as that range from 20 to 25 miles an hour. So any vehicle, whether it looks like a golf cart or any other neighborhood electric vehicle, there's a bunch of different names for them. If they go in that, if they can exceed 20 miles an hour but not 25 miles an hour, they are required by state law to register as a low-speed vehicle and to get plates.
Okay. So, and then another thing that I'd like to bring up, the off-road vehicle thing, like, I'm not even sure I like the fact that they could ever be approved for like a poker run or whatever, because the problem I see is, like, when the LSV golf cart people started driving on Main Street, there were a lot of other people who just assumed it was okay for them too, and they didn't have the proper registration or a license plate, but they started driving on Main Street. So I'm afraid if we approve the off-road vehicle for, say, the poker run or something else, then the same thing will happen, that the off-road vehicle people will think they can go everywhere. So anyway, those are just my concerns. I'm not saying change it or strike it. Those are just my concerns.
I may add just a response to that, Councilwoman, and that is, we haven't had that problem. The only exception that Board of Public Works and Safety is granted, because they have supervision over all the roads and sidewalks, for example, is for that one fundraiser, and the footprint is very well defined, and our police are very active in the monitoring of that, and we've not had any issues. But that's the only time, I believe, we've allowed off-road vehicles
Could you
to be in
clarify?
that footprint.
We haven't had any problems.
Yes.
Could you clarify that? What do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean by that is we haven't had the point I was trying to respond to there was, meaning that because we allowed it for the poker run, then there was a frequent occurrence of it happening everywhere else. And saying that's, and my chief is here too, but that hasn't been our experience.
So we've had no reports of off-road vehicles?
Oh, there's been a few leak in, just like trucks do here, but it's not a common occurrence.
Okay.
Yeah, or the chief could respond to that, but.
I would agree, it's not a common occurrence, but it does happen. And like everything else, enforcement is important. But I agree with much of what Councilman Krebs has said. When it comes to off-road vehicle, by the sheer name of it, off-road vehicle, I wish I'd known about this ordinance prior, because I've served on the traffic committee for going on the 6th year, as well as Councilman Tevenall and Bartlett. But now that I have had a chance to look at it over the weekend, it becomes pretty clear to me that I would rather prefer us to alter this ordinance to not even include off-road vehicles. I don't think they have a place, even if it's for 5 days or a weekend or for a special event. The last ordinance we spent a lot of time on, we talked about clean, safe, and beautiful. This doesn't seem to be safe to me.
I agree with my two fellow council members here. Off-road vehicles are very aggressive and their ability to reach high speeds. I was involved in an accident with one on a county road last summer that did about $6,000 in damage to my truck, by no fault of my own. And it just the nature of those vehicles they don't have any business on our city streets. It's not been a problem, and the Board of Works has kept tight control over it, but it's just a can of worms that I don't think we want to go anywhere near. And I had one other clarification, adding that golf carts could cross at the intersection of 3rd and Highway 421. Is that something that NDOT would need to approve, or because it's a lighted intersection?
They would not need to approve it because it's a 90-degree crossing.
Okay.
Yes. I think Josh was just trying to clarify that that is a legal crossing.
Okay.
It's frequent, it's already used.
Yeah.
And it's permitted by law, but it wasn't in here, and
Okay.
he made that clarification.
I would like to say that I love that people from the county love to drive into the city limits. I'm glad that we honor the county permits. I think that's great that they can come into town and be able to maneuver
We get a lot
in the
of.
proper vehicles.
Yes, that's right. Council, any further remarks on 2025-5? Same rules would apply. If we have any public comment, please come up, state your name and address, and your remarks. And everybody did great on the first ordinance. I was watching at the time, and so I appreciate everybody's consideration there. And Debbie, if you wouldn't mind, turn your mic on there. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. I'm Debbie Anderson, and I live at 417 Presbyterian Avenue in Madison. And my husband Dale is back here too, and we are the proud and happy owners of a low-speed vehicle. And we waited a long time to consider buying some kind of a golf cart. We wanted to wait till we had a garage to put it in, and we have that now. And we love our vehicle, and we chose the vehicle that we chose because we wanted something that was really safe. And it basically has, our particular vehicle has all the features that a car has, with the exception of doors. It's got regulation automobile windshield, it's got wipers, it's got the brightest lights in the world, front and back, it's got seat belts, it's super safe. And that's why we bought it, and we paid a nice amount to buy that vehicle. It wasn't so much about that we wanted to drive on Main Street. We found out that you could drive on any state road as long as the speed limit did not exceed 35. These vehicles don't go 35. They're very comfortable at 20. It might go 25. They're electric. But it does have a VIN number. And it was our understanding, and I had gone to the police department on 2 occasions to make sure about properly registering it, so it was okay in the city of Madison. And I was told I needed to comply with the state, and the state says if you have a VIN number, you need to register it with the state. So in addition to how much you pay for your fancy vehicle and buying your tag for it, your license plate, you also pay, because these are electric in most cases, you pay a very steep electric vehicle charge, which I did not know till I went up to the motor vehicle department, but I paid it. And I just renewed my tag, paid it again. And so it's not as important to us that we want to drive on Main Street, but what is convenient is to not have to go a good bit out of your way to cross at a light. For instance, I come out of my house on Presbyterian and I turn on Vine, and if I want to cross Main Street, you've got a good clear vision on both directions, and it would be very nice to be able to just go across and not have to go around if I want to go down to Second or First or to the river. So that would be helpful. But I understand the worry about that the tourists come in and they rent golf carts and they're confused. And it's just like they get confused, and I'm telling people all the time, you're going the wrong way on a one-way street. Same thing. I think a lot of the part with them comes down to that they need to be educated and perhaps given something in writing from the folks that are renting the golf carts. And I love all those people that rent golf carts. They're great people. But I think that they need to do a little better job educating these people on that there are some differences in vehicles between a regular golf cart and what's considered a low-speed vehicle. So I would recommend that maybe you talk to them. But, you know, I guess if you could convince me that that I don't have to comply with the state of Indiana and keep renewing my tag because it's something that Madison wants, you know, I mean, I think I'm kind of bound to have to buy that tag and pay that electric vehicle fee, I believe. I don't know, unless somebody knows something different than me. So in that respect, it's kind of not fair, because maybe, I guess, if I knew all that, maybe I would have considered selecting an electric regular golf cart. So something to think about. I do think that it's important in any ordinances to specify that there's 3 basic different kinds of vehicles. Your off-road people, and then the low-speed vehicle, and then the regular conventional golf cart that's not got a
And Debbie,
VIN number.
I have to cut you off because it's more than 4 minutes,
Okay,
but
sorry.
thank you for your feedback.
Thank you.
And for your input. And I will say that I know we only really have one golf cart rental, don't we, locally?
May I address that?
And they do a really good, yes, go ahead.
If I may address that, because I am part of the only golf cart rental company in town, and I will tell you that everyone who rents a cart from us gets, number one, a verbal education of where they can and cannot drive. Number two, a map with red lines on the roads they cannot drive. And number three, the backside of that map has the pertinent portions of the ordinance printed on it. I'm not sure what else we could do unless we put a driver in the cart with them.
Thank you, Councilman. Yeah,
All right.
there you go.
I'm Jim Pruitt. I'm the chairman of the Riverfront Development Committee. We've had the golf cart poker run, golf cart UTV poker run. I think this is going to be our 8th consecutive year. It's one of our 2 major fundraisers every year. Next year, we're hoping to add a 3rd fundraiser, so watch the news for that. So, but the golf cart UTV poker run been sponsored mostly by Super ATV in the past. We have met with the Board of Public Works before every golf cart UTV poker run, ask for a 1-day exemption. We talked to the police department about that exemption. We encourage the police department, the ambulance crew, fire departments and so forth to bring their UTVs to help to help oversee the event, to make sure. I am on the microphone before the event and we tell all of the UTV riders that they are there on a one-day exemption by the Board of Public Works and the Police Department. Their behavior will allow them to come back next year if they behave. If they do not, then we as a group, if there are problems, would not have them back. We have had 0 problems reported to the police, to my knowledge. We've asked the police every year after the event, was there anything that we need to know about? Is there anything we need to correct? And we've had a good record. So I'm here if there's anybody who'd like to ask any questions about that event. That's one of our it's one of our major fundraisers, and we've started out with maybe 300-400. Last year we had maybe 2,000 people, and we're trying to advertise it more regionally. We had all of your golf carts rented. We brought in 2 semi-loads of golf carts, and then the folks throughout the county that have their UTVs can ride them into town, and for that one day be at that event.
How many people would you say have the off-road vehicles for your event?
I would say probably 10 or 15%.
Okay, thanks.
And Jim's right, and I'm monitoring those things all the time too. We have not had a problem, but it's also a public process, so when they apply for the street closures and for that, we have that hearing in the Board of Public Works and Safety, and anybody with concerns can come and address the Board of Public Works, and we haven't, and so we've been very limited on allowing them here. It really has only been that event, and we've also been monitoring it, and if I see a problem, I'm on the phone with JD or Jim or John or anybody or who's part of the organization. We just haven't had an issue with that particular event. And we all know, just how much Super ATVs contributed to our community too.
And if you haven't attended our event, I'd invite you to come attend our event. All right, thanks.
Bigger and better. Thank you. Thank you. Any other public remarks on ordinance 2025-5?
Sandy Palmer, 105 East 3rd Street. The only thing I had on that is like, on the ordinance, when you read it, not that we have a lot of people probably reading the ordinances, but if they did, when you say golf cart, ATV, and the 3 things all the way through it, it leads you to believe that off-road vehicles are going to be okay until you get down to like paragraph S that says only through the Board of Public Works can those be approved for one day. So it seems like it might clarify it earlier if you define the 3 things and then said that the off-road vehicles are not going to be allowed except for 1, 2, 3 days, whatever BPW agrees.
Well, I would just address that, which is even if they do get a permit, for example, they can't just be anywhere. So I think the construct here was all 3 of those types of vehicles are subject to the same locations in which they can be, even except the one, which is if you are going to be an ORV in any of those locations, you have to have the BPW approval. So it just methodically goes through it and then puts the exception in there relative to ORVs. I think that was the intent.
Yeah, I just thought maybe an earlier reference to that would maybe help people, and you can still go through it. They're still subject to the crosswalks.
I would agree. Just remember, I mentioned that at our meeting when we talked about it. I said, I didn't figure out till the very last paragraph.
That's just me. I was thinking, oh my God,
I
don't
agree
know
with
how
you.
noisy
Just
they are.
moving
I was
it
worried
up
about
in the
noise,
ordinance,
but
maybe.
I thought, and then I didn't get till the end, and maybe I didn't read it
Yeah.
carefully enough, but just a little reminder at the first that this is not saying all these are allowed.
Yeah, that's a good point, and it's a typical structure for types of requirements for motor vehicles and safety equipment, but we can look at reordering our paragraphs if needed to put that paragraph a little higher up so that it's not hidden at the bottom.
Thank you. Anybody else? Sorry, we have another remark?
Lisa Ferguson. I'm sorry, Josh, when you were talking is when everybody was leaving, so the back part of the room, we got a little bit of what you were talking about. I don't have anything to say other than what Debbie did. We both have low-speed vehicles. I bought it for that intention. We got rid of our second car because that's now my car and my way to get around. I did go up to the BMV today to try to say, if Madison comes up with this, y'all know that, Charlie doesn't say no to me. So when I went and bought a new vehicle and said it's $700 because I want to drive the 1 mile on Main Street, he lets me do whatever. So that's why I got it, because I love driving on Main Street. About 6 o'clock at night when the lights all come on, we don't really drive it during the daytime. It's too busy. Don't really care to do that. But the point that Debbie was making, and Carla brought up, maybe to grandfather us people in, the issue that the lady at the B&B explained to me today is, by the state of Indiana law, I have bought a car. So if I decide I don't want that car anymore, I either have to show paperwork that I've sold it or it's being demolished. Otherwise, I'm going to get the bill again next year, and I'm going to be paying that bill every year for something that I don't need, because I can drive any other road. Love driving up to Coles on the multimodal road that the mayor came up with. So that's the only thing I wanted to explain. As far as she knew today at the B&B, every year I would have to be getting that, because I have a VIN number. It's a car to them. So there's no next year after it's not due, I can't not pay it, because the state of Indiana says I have a car. So just that clarification from her today.
Thank you. Any other people here? We've already gone through our reports of city officials. We have no bills on second reading. This is the additional time on our agenda for public comments. I know that we had a lot of public comment on the 2 ordinances. Are there any other public comments here from our sign-up sheet?
I do have people signed up today. And so if I call your name,
overlap with.
right, and you will always have the opportunity to comment on the ordinances without signing up. The sign-up is only for the people at the end that are bringing up something that we have not discussed. So if I call you up and you say, you can decline or pass or whatever. So Champ Clausen, you're first. And I will remind you that it is a 4-minute time limit, and I will have my alarm set. We're all in training here.
I knew that you would remind me, Carla.
Okay.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, I'm Champ Clausen, reside at 722 West 3rd Street. I want to talk in support of Ordinance 2025-4. And as I've listened, I've heard how this ordinance would eliminate the ability for homeless to go into vacant homes. And I asked that, as I present 3 things that this ordinance could potentially do, that you take into special consideration. I'm not talking just as a homeowner now. I came to Madison because of a divorce that rendered me homeless. So I'm on the other side. But I'm in support of the ordinance because I believe that it will do 3 crucial things. Number 1, it helps clean our neighborhoods, thus addressing and impacting health concerns. The buildings of disrepair are safety hazards in a lot of areas. And the issues with rodents, which has been talked about, is also something that we experience in our neighborhood. Not just skunks and hedgehogs and things like that. We've also had reports of a fox being underneath the shed, and things that are causing structural as well as health concerns in that manner. Second, it pushes for the advancement of socioeconomic equality. In other words, we have ordinances in which lower and middle income individuals are asked to clean up their properties and to maintain their homes in order to abide by our important ordinances. And after doing so, they come outside, they look right across the street or walk right down the street and see abandoned properties that have been that way for years. I don't think that it's fair, and I would like to hear the logic of how that can be when we're asking one group of people to do and abide by ordinances, and yet another group of people can totally ignore such. The third I wish to discuss is the economic impact that this ordinance can have upon our community. See, when the building sits empty, all the community gets is property tax. That's it. However, when the building is restored, we get the opportunity for families to come in. We get an opportunity for rent. Those families have to buy groceries. They have to buy goods and services which further impact our economy as a city, and it allows the city to invest more into that neighborhood. I live on West 3rd Street, which I've already told Madam Clerk. If you walk down, and if you want to, I walk you down. I had a stroke. I need as much exercise as I can get. And I will show you the abandoned properties. I will show you and introduce you to the people that care about the neighborhood. This ordinance will help not just allow the beautification of Madison to continue, but can you imagine how it would open up the homes and the ability for those people that are homeless or lower income to rent a property that now sits abandoned? Not to mention that it will create the opportunity for more revenue of those very homeowners who don't open up their homes. That's my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Champ. Thank you very much.
Okay, Ken McWilliams was second, and he already spoke, and I think he is gone. Robert Lofton has already spoken, and I think he is gone. Oh, okay. It says Lofton on here,
Is it
but
Lofton?
it is. Ryan Rogers. Okay. V. Young. Thank you. Felicia has already spoken and gone. Lisa Ferguson, pass. Sandy Palmer, thank you. Thomas Lowe, Loeh, okay. Debbie, anything else to, okay. Angie Williams has already spoken, nothing else. David Wise. Annie Schroeder. Thank you. Link Luddington. Thank you. Brian S.
Brian Shaw, you can talk anytime, Brian. Where are you?
Okay. All right, so that's it.
I want to thank everybody for their time tonight, their involvement, their engagement. That's what helps us with all of these. I have a couple of remarks, and then I'll turn it back over to council before we adjourn. I want to just ask the community if they have seen in council a special announcement about Zaxby's coming to Madison. So we are working very hard on our continued business recruitment, and another restaurant option will be at Sunrise Crossing. We're very active and also very encouraged about the amount of business that's occurring at Sunrise Crossing. That we're very optimistic that within the next year we'll recruit a sit-down restaurant for the designated area, which is on the south side of that property. If you go to the podium.
What's being built there by the plaza where Cafe D's is, or something, right?
Jimmy John's.
Okay.
Yes, so the Jimmy John's will be there. Just for all you Jimmy John's fans, I believe they're going to start framing in the next week or so. Oh, there we go. So you have a Jimmy John's. Invite the community on March the 24th at 11:30 a.m. A project that has been years in the making. In fact, I would say 30 plus years in the making. And this is the first multifamily project on the hilltop in a very, very long time. Residents at Sunrise Crossing, we will have our groundbreaking. They're already doing site work there. We'll have our official groundbreaking, and it's going to be phenomenal investment for the city. Continuing with our major policy initiatives, on April the 8th, we'll also introduce portions of our updated personal handbook to council in ordinance format for their approval. And then on the legislative update front, we're continuing to work with our state legislature on the bills that are going through the session this year on property tax reform and the impacts it's going to have on schools, towns, cities, counties, libraries. There's not a unit of government, townships, there's not a unit of government that's not affected by it, and we're advocating very diligently for maintaining our level of funding for our essential services here for the city of Madison. So that is all I have. I'd like to, Councilman Bartley, you have a remark?
Yes, I do, Mr. Mayor. Last night, I was fortunate to be able to attend a meeting of the Jefferson County Board of Tourism. Last night, the Board of Tourism heard 28 organizations with presentations of events or activities that are tourism-related that they are proposing for Madison and Jefferson County. The economic impact that these 28 amazing opportunities can bring to this community is really hard to fathom. And to make it even more amazing, almost all of these, well, all of these really, are volunteer-based. And the volunteer base in Madison, Jefferson County is absolutely phenomenal. But to anybody out there who has a passion of something they want to be involved in, I assure you there's a volunteer group out there that could use your help. So raise your hands. But again, just an amazing group of proposals last night for tourism activities that will be going on in this community over the course of the next few months. Thank you.
That's why there's so many great things to do, and the quality of life in Madison is unparalleled. Council, any other remarks?
Yeah, just one. Thanks for everybody for your feedback on the golf cart ordinance. If you did want to talk any more about that, just catch me after the meeting and we can discuss. I think we'll definitely take everything under advisement. I'll speak to my fellow council members as well about their concerns. And
I'd like to add that I ate a piece of chocolate during the meeting, and the fortune in it said, manifest it and you'll make it happen. Isn't that serendipitous?
Mayor, can you verify again that groundbreaking apartment date? Because I had it.
24th.
Thank you. I had it wrong.
Manifest it and you'll make it happen. Councilwoman?
Yeah, I would move to adjourn the meeting.
Second the motion.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Thank you for
You're
coming.
adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Mine says, yeah. Does it say the 19th? Manifest. Oh, I had tomorrow on my calendar. I just.